What's going on, everybody? OGJ Bug 23 here. I'm joined by my longtime friend here, Dawson Wiedrich. Dawson, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey guys, first off, Junior, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. We tried to do this the other day, but technology just doesn't like us for some reason.
Yeah, I totally
But
know.
yeah, and so I'm a YouTuber myself. Like Junior said, we've been longtime friends. We played junior high football together. We've known each other through high school, and so we've known each other for a long time. And I do a channel where I do a lot of different things. On my channel, I do a lot of like movie reviews, video game stuff, sometimes gameplay like Junior does. Of course, not as good at it as Junior is. But yeah, we just do a lot of stuff on my channel. It's called Nerdy in Many Ways, so you can check that out. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, if you guys haven't already, I would definitely go check it out. If you're into a lot of comic books, a lot of movie reviews, if you're into music covers, I think you're doing some kind of music project, right? You said on Facebook.
Yeah, we're doing this collaboration where, like, since nobody can really interact with each other with this whole, pandemic thing, we're having people send in videos of them singing along to a song called "Down to the Honky Tonk" by Jake Owens. So it's gonna be a fun time. So if you're interested, you can definitely let me know and let Junior know.
Yeah, definitely. So if you haven't already, go check him out. But without further ado, I think we should get started. So I invited Dawson here today. We're going to be ranking our top 10 most favorite sports moments of all time. It's not the top 10 greatest sports moments, but the ones that are our favorites. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dawson take it away with number 10.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. And yeah, like Junior said, there's a lot of things on our list that a lot of people won't agree with. So this is just our opinion. So it's gonna be fun today. I'm excited for this.
Me too.
Um, Number 10, I have Gordon Hayward, his half court missed shot versus Duke in the 2010 national championship game. And it's weird because you wouldn't expect a missed shot to be on a top 10 sports moment list, but I distinctly remember watching Butler's run in the national tournament. And that shot, I remember, Junior, you and I were talking about this the other day, how when that shot went up, it looked like it was going in. It
Oh,
looked like
yeah.
it'd be the upset of the decade with, of course, Duke going in. I believe they were the number one seed in that
Right.
tournament. And everybody wanted them to lose. Like, everybody. Like, nobody wanted to see Duke win it again. And seeing Butler, Cinderella like that win it would have been amazing. And it's been analyzed so much since then. Like, I think it's the most analyzed missed shot in all of basketball history. I might
Oh,
be
yeah, I
wrong, but
have
it seems
to.
like it
I
to me.
have to agree that it's probably up there for sure. No, yeah, no, that sports moment, I remember sitting there watching it on my grandma's couch, and the shot goes up, and it seemed like it took an eternity for that ball to come down.
Yeah.
It left his hand, and it just went up, and you're like, oh my gosh, that has a chance to go in. And it hits the backboard, and it hits the front of the rim, and you're sitting there thinking, like, wow, that's going to go in. And then it just, I don't know how it didn't go in, honestly. Like,
It just breaks your heart.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was hard. I wasn't a Duke fan. I don't mind them as much as I used to. I couldn't
Right.
stand them growing up, but I don't mind them as much as I don't really mind them just because Coach K has done a great job with Duke, and he's such a great coach, and Team USA and everything. So you got to respect the man for what he does. But at the time, everybody, like you said, everybody wanted Duke to lose. And Butler was a Cinderella story that we hadn't really gotten the chance to see. I mean, you remember George Mason in like 2005, the
Yeah.
underdog, but they didn't make it to the national championship game. So that was something that we had never really seen before in the tournament, at least in my lifetime, in your lifetime as well. So that was a pretty significant moment, I think, in sports history.
And then Butler tried to do it again the next year, and that was an ugly game. We won't get
Yeah.
into that,
Yeah, that was the next year was really bad. All right, so for my 10th pick, I'm going to have to go with the Minneapolis Miracle in the 2018 divisional playoff game against the New Orleans Saints. For one reason, it's one of the most crazy plays that I've ever seen in person. I was golfing with a friend, and we were watching it on my phone as we were golfing, and it wasn't that great of a game at the time. Like, it was just a
right?
typical playoff football game, nothing crazy. We walked into my house with like 14 seconds left on the kickoff or something like that, and the Saints had just scored, probably going to win. And with 7 seconds left, Case Keenum steps back to throw. And for some reason, I don't know what the Saints safety was thinking on this play, but he goes up to tackle the guy, like hit him at his legs, and completely whiffs. And Stephon Diggs goes up and catches it, runs it in for a touchdown, takes it in, and the Minnesota Vikings end up moving on to the NFC Championship game where they got destroyed by the Eagles. But it was one of the most crazy sports moments I've ever seen. I honestly compare it to the 1986 Bill Buckner missed ground ball. Like, it was just something that happened. Like, it was that big of a blunder on the defensive side where it cost them a chance at a championship. You know what I mean? Like, the Saints that year were loaded, and they probably honestly could have been in the Super Bowl for sure that year. And the next year, too, getting that blown call against the Rams. So it was kind of heartbreaking.
Past couple years, New Orleans Saints fans have really had to deal with heartbreak. I mean, I always say that safety pulled a Raheem Moore in that Vikings game. You and I both know what we're talking about there.
Yeah.
But I do remember that one as well. I remember it's a common theme throughout my list as well, is that a lot of these moments I didn't actually personally witness when it happened, which sucks because, like, I remember seeing the Minneapolis Miracle happen when I was, like, scrolling through Instagram. I remember I had been out of town the whole day, and so I didn't have a chance to really watch any of the playoff games. And I got home and I saw the clip of the Minneapolis Miracle, and I'm just like, you got to be freaking kidding me. Like, I missed out on this.
Yeah.
Gosh dang. But I totally agree. And I think, I don't know, it kind of ties in with my next one because it's another game-winning one that I have for my number 9 spot.
Uh-huh.
And my number 9 spot goes to Deshaun Watson's touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow to beat Bama in the national title game.
That's
I believe it was
funny.
2016, I think is what it was.
Yeah. I think it was a 2017 national
2017, right.
Yeah, but it was a 2016 season. But that's funny because that's also my number 9 pick.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. It was like, gosh dang, how the heck? But I remember I was in Los Angeles, California at the time, starting a church mission where we weren't really allowed to watch sports because we had to, like, focus on this, like, church stuff. And my dad's a huge Clemson fan, been a huge Clemson fan since the mid-'80s, early '90s. And so he suffered through a lot of years of terrible teams. I mean, I just got to say Tommy Bowden. That's all I got to say about that. And, they went through a lot as a fan, or a fandom of just terrible years. And then for them to beat, like we talked about the other day, one of the best teams Bama's ever put together in the national championship game, and pass to Hunter Renfrow, of all people, a small white guy who's kind of resembles more of like a Julian Edelman or Danny Amendola, who really you don't really hear about until these big moments.
Right.
And one of the distinct memories I have of that happening was my family updating me and emailing me the scores and such. And then I got a video of my older brother who was watching it out in Utah. And he was watching the play, and you see him jumping around and screaming. And I was just watching the video like, holy cow, this is awesome. And it was my birthday, too. It was my 20th birthday. So I call my birthday magic, save Clemson. So you're welcome, Dad.
No, I remember. So I was home for Christmas break over my sophomore year of college, and my dad and I were watching the game. And I remember my dad likes to go to bed kind of early. He's not one to kind of stay up late, and so he wanted to go to bed. And I told my dad, I was like, there's no way you could go to sleep right now. Like, this is one of the best national championships I've ever watched. It was just back and forth the whole game, both offenses putting up points, and then both defenses kind of struggling to stop them when they needed to most. And I thought Deshaun Watson that year got robbed of the Heisman Award. I think he definitely deserved it. I mean, put up numbers that were just ridiculous. And like you said, Hunter Renfrow being the hero for them, just kind of weird because he's this little small guy you wouldn't expect to be catching the game-winning pass in a national championship. So that was really interesting to see for sure. And it was one of the best games I've ever watched in college football. I honestly would much rather have watched the 2019 national championship game where Clemson just absolutely blew out Alabama with Trevor Lawrence.
That was glorious.
Yeah, I would honestly
amazing.
Much rather watch that kind of a game. But at the same time, I'm sitting there. Well, I'm not really a huge fan of either one of those teams that were playing, but I can't stand Alabama. So I was rooting for Clemson that whole time. And I don't know. I've ever since that moment, it's not that I'm a Clemson bandwagon fan, but I really admire what Dabo Swinney does over there at Clemson.
It's a very respectable program.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so you sit there and watch it, and you just think, man, these kids are not only learning about sports from one of the better coaches in football, but they're just learning a lot about life. And you got to appreciate a coach like that who's willing to teach kids that it's not just about winning and losing. It's about the process of becoming a better man and the process of being a better part of society. And I think he just does a really good job with that. So I think that's why that sports moment was just big. because it solidified his spot as one of the best coaches in college football.
It really did. No, I totally agree. It's very much an enigma in college football. A lot of it is just simply about winning, but Dabo Swinney really recognizes what sports is intended to do in the first place. It's intended to teach you how to be tough and power through difficult things. And sticking with football, my number 8 spot on most impactful sports moments in my lifetime, or I guess for me, number 8, and you can respect this as a fellow Denver Broncos fan, the day that Peyton Manning became a Denver Bronco. And, we talked about this, how it was just an unbelievable thing. There's very few times where I've witnessed my dad, who's a big dude, he played semi-professional football, he's a linebacker. There are very few times where I've ever seen him cry. And I saw him cry that day, tears of joy, because he went and saw Peyton Manning play the Broncos the year before. Mm-hmm. He went to, I think it was Sports Authority Field or Investco at the time, and saw Peyton Manning just dismantle our Broncos when Tim Tebow was our quarterback. Bless Tebow. But I remember him coming home and saying, like, that is the best quarterback I've ever seen in my life. And he was just raving about him. And then just a couple months later to see that update, like, Peyton Manning, a Denver Bronco. If there was a definition of jaws hitting the floor, that moment was it, because I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I was in shock and I didn't believe it when I first saw a lot of articles on my Twitter page. So I was scrolling through Twitter, and at the time Twitter wasn't as popular then as it was now, or as it is now. So, like, I was kind of scrolling through there just because I was really bored and didn't really have anything else to do. And I stumbled upon a couple posts saying that Peyton Manning's a Denver Bronco. And I was like, there's no way that, one, John Elway was able to pull something like that off. Two, the year before, we just won a playoff game with Tim Tebow. Like, did we really want to replace, what we had going? And three, I was a little bit upset at the time because, as you know, Peyton Manning's career looked like it might have been over with his neck and shoulder surgery.
Right. There was nothing that was certain about him.
Yeah, he had that stem cell surgery that you just didn't know whether or not it was going to work out for him. And so when he first got signed, I was in disbelief. I didn't believe it, and I didn't want it to be true at first. But then after you watch him through training camp and practices, and you watch him through the preseason, he looked like the Peyton Manning of old. And the Denver Broncos should have probably won the Super Bowl in 2012. His first year.
They should have won 3 Super Bowls those years. I mean,
yeah, they got beat by the Ravens.
The biggest gamble ever that paid off so well for a franchise.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. Turned the whole franchise around. I mean, it's not like Denver was the laughing stock of football, but they weren't. Like, with Kyle Orton, they weren't anything special. Then Tim Tebow, I mean, they won a playoff game, but they barely squeaked into the postseason that year.
Kyle Orton doesn't count as a Broncos quarterback, in my opinion. He just doesn't count.
Yeah, those were some bad Bronco years. I remember we started out, 6-0, that his first year as Denver.
And we had just beaten the Patriots, yeah.
And they didn't even make the playoffs that year. So gosh. It was rough. It was a rough 2 or 3 years with Orton as quarterback.
I think it's time to move on because this is bringing up some very sad memories for me.
So for number 8 for me, I'm going to have to go with Villanova's Chris Jenkins game winner versus North Carolina in the 2016 NCAA championship game. It's just one of those moments where, as a kid, if you ever played basketball and you wanted to play at the college level, your dream was hitting the game-winning shot in the March Madness tournament.
Exactly. Like, how many times have you, when you've been practicing, said to yourself, 3, 2, 1, he wins? Yeah, every kid does that. You're absolutely right.
Every kid does that loves basketball. And so to get to watch that happen live, it was crazy. I remember a lot of my college roommates at the time, or at least teammates, were North Carolina basketball fans. And as a Kansas fan, I don't really have any preferences if Kansas isn't there. But as a basketball fan, you can't help but sit there and just think, like, man, I wish that could have been me. Like, I wish I could have been the one putting up that game-winning shot to hit it. Because as soon as he hit the shot, the whole bench cleared. They had to step up onto the platform. They all took off running. Confetti starts falling. They dogpile in the middle of the court. Like, as a sports fan, like, I got to do that myself winning a state championship. We got to dogpile at the pitcher's mound after winning it, and it was one of the best feelings ever. I can only imagine that happening at the national level in front of millions of fans that are watching it, in front of all those people in that stadium. It's just crazy. It's something that I would have loved to have happened for me. So That's why it comes in at number 8.
Well, I would just love to have won a state championship in general, so be grateful for what you have, Junior.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. But my number 7 moment is sticking with college, what's going over to football. A lot of mine are football. It's when Boise State beat TCU in the Fiesta Bowl to go 14-0, one of the very few teams to do so in college football history. And, I mean, last time we talked about this, I mean, you know very well how annoying I was about Boise State in those early years of me being fans of them. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I knew everybody's name on the roster. Like, I was talking about them nonstop. It was ridiculous. But I remember that day that they played in the Fiesta Bowl against TCU, I was in our living room at our McClave house, and we had this computer in our living room. We didn't have, like, channels except for, like, the bunny ear things that didn't really work. So I had to watch it on a lagging computer screen with terrible internet and sitting on pins and needles, and it was a 17-14 score game, so super low scoring. So super tense as it is, and you had the slow internet. And I remember seeing them win that game and thinking, yeah, you know what? This is finalized as my team. Because I'd been following them the whole year, and I was really excited about it. And I was really getting excited about my own team for the first time because I wanted to find my own team besides my dad's favorite team, Clemson, as much as I like them. And that moment I was just like, yeah, this is a program I can get behind. This is a program I've become a fan of. Might sound a little like bandwagoning, which probably right. But you know what? It was just an awesome moment for sure.
Yeah, no, and I think that solidified that moment in time where we need to start looking at smaller schools as being football schools. Like, there's a lot of schools out there that just don't get the recognition because they're not in the Power 5. There's a lot of schools in the Power 5 that are just awful, but they still get all of the exposure and everything just because they play in those conferences, like Vanderbilt and the Kentucky, schools like that in the SEC that haven't always been good. They get all this recognition for what they do, and, you know, most of the time they probably don't deserve it. They're not any better than some of these smaller schools, and I think that's the problem that we have with the college football playoffs. I know we talked about this last time is, you know, they need to expand it because we need those smaller schools. UCF absolutely blew out Auburn in that one game. I think they did end up beating Auburn in that bowl game. And then just watching a bunch of other schools compete at those bowl game levels, you know, those smaller schools can probably compete with those bigger ones. They just don't get the exposure. So I think they need to expand it for sure.
Yeah, and with the college football playoff being only 4 teams, I mean, the big-time recruits are only going to target schools that they think will make the playoff and they have a chance to play for national title games. So it really limits you recruitment-wise. And so it almost kind of makes it so it's harder for those small schools to get them. Like, we're grateful we have the playoff, no doubt. And so it kind of like more solidifies who the winner is or who the national champion really should be. But it does create that division recruiting-wise. Totally agree.
Yeah. No, I totally see that side of it. The recruiting thing, it definitely hurts because, you know, as a former college athlete, I'd much rather play somewhere where I'm going to get the exposure to be seen by not only scouts, but just people in general. So they get to talk about you. You get the buzz from all that stuff. You don't really get that when you play at a small school like, you know, D2 school here, like where I go at Western. You know, we have Austin Eckler played football here for Western just a few years ago, and now he's, you know, the starting running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. There's kids at small schools that deserve to be seen, and I think that they need to expand the college football playoffs so we get to see all of that, because some of the greatest wide receivers, just like talking about that specific position, played at small schools. Like Randy Moss played at Marshall. You've got Jerry Rice, small D2 school at the time. So I think they just need to expand it because you just never know what you're missing out on when you don't. So
exactly.
For my number 7 pick, you have this higher up on your list, but number 7 is going to be Peyton Manning riding off as a Super Bowl champion on a Super Bowl 50. He didn't have the greatest game, and it wasn't because of the game he played that this cemented his legacy for me. But after everything that had happened that year with, you know, him having that foot surgery and then having to contend with the starting spot again for Brock Osweiler and a lot of Bronco fans arguing back and forth who was the better selection for the postseason, who was going to be the quarterback to take them to win a championship that year. And I don't think it really mattered who would have played quarterback for the Broncos because that defense was just so good. I don't think it would have mattered.
The best defense of all time, in my opinion. And being totally biased, but partially not.
Yeah, no, I mean, the statistics, they have one of the best passing defenses that I've ever seen, especially pass rushing. Yeah,
Yes.
like you said, they're one of the best defenses of all time. They're definitely top three for me. I don't know if they're number one quite yet, but they're
Mhm.
definitely top three with the 85 Bears and the 2013
Yeah.
Seahawks. I mean, they're up there for sure. So, but yeah, watching him retire as a Super Bowl champion, watching him retire as a Bronco, his final game, scoring that 2-point conversion, like, it
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily the game he had, but it was just he played well enough in the moment to win the Super Bowl. He showed how to play with class, how to play with poise, and it was just, as a Peyton Manning fan my entire life, I honestly, like, it's one of the only few moments where I can say, I was happy that somebody retired because they went off as a winner. You don't get to say that about
Right.
a lot of guys. So I don't know.
There's just something about being a Broncos quarterback that when you win the Super Bowl, you go off into the sunset. So
Yeah, that's right. John Elway did it. Peyton Manning did it. Hopefully someday another quarterback will lead us to another one. Hopefully it's Drew Luck, because I really like Drew Luck, and I
hopefully.
hope he's the guy. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'll talk a little more about that when I talk about where it's at on my list. But I totally agree. As the lifelong Bronco fan myself, it was really cool to witness that. Again, I'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But at number 6 for me, I have the Spurs defeating the defending NBA champs, the Detroit Pistons, in 2005. And I've been a lifelong Spurs fan just because most of my childhood I grew up in the San Antonio area. And I mean, it doesn't hurt that I was definitely around one of the best franchises ever known during that period of time. And, I remember I was 8 years old and I was living in a little bit outside of San Antonio. And I mean, it wasn't quite really into sports yet because I was 8 years old. I mean, a lot of 8-year-olds don't really get into sports that quickly, at least not in my situation. And I remember, though, my dad watching the game or having the game on somewhere. And then all of a sudden when they won, just feeling this rumble like of cheering from other houses nearby and just feeling this energy. And all of a sudden people were just flipping out. And I remember little young me was just like, what the heck is going on? And looking back and seeing what that accomplished, ending the Pistons' potential dynasty, but also further solidifying Tim Duncan and the San Antonio Spurs as a dynasty really to be trifled with. And just seeing where all that led years later, eventually to another one that's going to be on my list here in a little bit, which is really cool to see.
yeah, no, I compare that kind of feeling as the same feeling when Denver won Super Bowl 50. I
Yeah.
remember leaving my grandma's house after the game was over to drive back to Lamar, and you couldn't drive faster than 10 miles an hour. Like, there were people all over Main Street screaming,
Yeah.
raising flags. Cars were honking like crazy. Police were just trying to make sure that everyone was moving safely.
Yeah.
It
Dogs
was
and cats
just,
living together.
yeah,
Mass hysteria.
it was just like you could feel the whole town of Lamar just shaking, just celebrating the entire night. I'm pretty sure we ended up canceling baseball practice the next day. We ended up having a study hall instead because it was just like that big of a moment on campus.
Let's be
So
honest, there was no study. You were just watching highlights.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So it was just really cool to see, and I can totally relate to that feeling that you had with the Spurs. So I could see why it's up on your list for sure.
Yeah.
So for me, my number 6, I know it's going to be up on your list pretty high, but it's going to be Boise State upsetting Oklahoma in the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl in 2007.
Oh, yeah.
When you're down to your last play of the game, what should be the last play of the game, it's like 4th and 18. There's not a lot of plays that you could probably run that is going to allow you to gain 18 yards, let alone let you tie the game.
Right.
But Boise State pulled off one of the coolest plays I've ever seen. I love the movie Varsity Blues.
Oh.
I love watching Billy Bob catch that hook and ladder pass at the very end and running it in for a touchdown. And
Yeah.
so to see Boise State run the hook and ladder play like that, where the guy catches it and then tosses it to the next person running around him for a touchdown, it's one of the best plays I've ever seen in college football, one. And then not only that, but in this game, you also have that hook and ladder play, and then you have the Statue of Liberty 2-point conversion that sealed the victory for Boise State. And then you have your star running back running over to his fiance and proposing to her. Like, what? You can't ask for a better story, like a fairy tale.
Oh,
Like, you
man.
just can't ask for a better situation. And I
And the
think,
cool thing about that running back cheerleader thing is they're still together. Like I follow them on Instagram and they're
yeah,
great people. They're just it's such a cool, like you just said, so many cool things come from that. It sparked a program, really. I mean, it was good to begin with, but it sparked it into the spotlight. And yeah, no, it just caused a lot of cool things to happen in the next couple of years.
oh yeah, and then the Boise State's quarterback gets the NCAA football cover
Oh,
after
yes.
that. Like it was Boise State put small schools onto the map. I think, like
Yes.
for especially for the BCS era, but like for now, like the college football players for UCF, just to get the exposure that they have gotten. I think it's all thanks to this moment when, you know, Boise State beat a powerhouse in Oklahoma. Oklahoma was one of the better schools. I think Sam Bradford was their starting quarterback, if I'm not
They
mistaken.
had Adrian Peterson as the running back. Sam Bradford wasn't no yeah, he wasn't quite there yet,
Wasn't
but it was
quite there,
Adrian
yeah.
Peterson at the running back, yeah.
So I think, but at the same time, like it was just two of the best plays I've ever seen in college football. Proposal on top of it, and then it's just seeing the small school underdog come out on top. It's always you always have to find the underdog on a list somewhere. So that's why it comes in at number 6.
And, and also speaking of that proposal, we were talking about how we proposed to our wives the other day when we
Yeah,
were talking about this. That proposal makes both of ours look extremely lame,
yeah,
especially mine.
oh
Like
yeah,
mine just looks like idiot in comparison.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
No,
Mine doesn't come anywhere close to that, especially that big of a moment and on national television. Like
yeah.
everybody saw that proposal. So
Oh man.
crazy.
Well, sorry, wife, I couldn't give you anything cooler than that. But moving on from there, my number 5 sports moment is one you already mentioned: Denver Broncos winning Super Bowl 50. And so, same thing with Clemson winning the national title game. I was also in Los Angeles at this time, doing the whole missionary thing. And we talked the other day, like the years that I was a missionary, not able to watch sports, were some of the best years in sports ever.
Oh
And it
yeah.
kind of makes me furious. But no, the Broncos winning the Super Bowl was one of the coolest things because they won back-to-back Super Bowls, like starting the year that I was born, 1997 and 1998, when my uncle was on his church mission, those 2 years that he was gone. And so it's kind of a family thing. We're like, oh, as long as the Wiedrich is on a church mission, the Broncos will do something good.
Hmm.
They went to the Super Bowl when my older brother was on his, but they lost, so he didn't do a good enough job. but I remember we were coming home to our apartment, me and my the guy that I worked with, and the guy downstairs from us always had his windows open, and he had a massive TV. Occasionally, we'd come home, we'd see him like playing Call of Duty or something, and this night he had the Super Bowl on, of course. And so I decided to take the trash from our kitchen, went downstairs, put the trash in the bin outside, and just kind of like was like breaking my neck trying to get a peek as I'm walking by the window. And I saw the final kickoff to the Panthers, and then the clock winding down, and Peyton Manning taking the field and being crowned the Super Bowl champion was one of the coolest things. Because again, when Peyton Manning became a Broncos quarterback, there was a lot of questions up in the air, but there was that feeling that something was going to change. And to see that come to full fruition was a really cool moment to see, just because, again, the Broncos had struggled for years. I mean, in the later years of Shanahan, and then, of course, you had, gosh dang, I don't even remember his name, Josh
Josh
McDaniels.
McDaniels, yeah.
That,
Oh.
yeah, struggling through those years, and then to have Gary Kubiak, a former backup Broncos quarterback, John Elway, a former Broncos legend, as the GM, and then Peyton Manning, a Hall of Famer to say the least, all in the same organization, making something happen, was just beautiful. Poetry in motion, basically.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like I said earlier, it's one of those sports moments. As a huge fan of the Broncos, I'll just never forget that
Yeah,
feeling that we had. Um, so yeah, I could see exactly why it's high up on your list. It would have been higher if it wasn't for, some of these moments that I've gotten to witness that you
right.
just couldn't believe. But so for my number 5 moment, I'm gonna go with Derek Jeter's walk-off hit in his last game at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
This is one of the very few times that I can honestly say I cried like a baby. And not because like it was like
I find
something
that hard to
sad.
believe, Junior.
Not because it was sad or anything, but just because I watched Derek Jeter from the time I was born till I was in high school when he finally retired. My very first baseball jersey that I ever owned was a Derek Jeter jersey. When I was a kid, I was probably 2 or 3 years old. My parents have home videos of me trying to mimic his stance while he's hitting at the plate in the World Series. So I grew up a lifelong Yankees fan, not just because, my dad was a Yankees fan, but because
Mhm.
Derek Jeter was one of the best players in baseball at the time. And I don't care what the defensive metrics, advanced statistics say, I'm still going to believe that Derek Jeter has, changed baseball. He was just an icon. He played in New York in one of the biggest market in all of sports, and performed to the level that he did. To watch him finally go out on top, watch him get a hit in his last at-bat at Yankee Stadium, and it to win the game for the Yankees was just a fairy tale. Like, I honestly probably wouldn't have believed you if you'd have told me that was going to happen 15, 16 years later. So It was a big moment in my life, that's for sure.
No, I totally agree with that. I told you the other day that whenever I hear something good happening with the New York Yankees, I'm just like, oh, somewhere out there, Junior's happy.
Yep.
And I remember hearing about that. I was like, oh, Junior's extra happy today. Like, he is just beaming with happiness right now. And, like you said, I remember seeing you at school always wearing your Derek Jeter jersey. And I never got as into baseball as you did. Then again, that's really hard to do. But I do remember, like, seeing how excited you got about these things. And it was always cool. I could always kind of respect that, even though I couldn't necessarily relate. So I totally understand why it's on your list.
Definitely.
And so I know this next one's going to hurt you a little bit because I know you're a Kansas fan. But number 4 on my list is one that I did get to witness, was Northern Iowa upsetting Kansas in the 2010 NCAA tournament. And again, the 2010 NCAA tournament was amazing. That's the same one with Butler and Duke.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason I remember this game so distinctly was not just because it was an upset, but because of this small white guy named Farokmanesh. I still remember his last name, even though I hardly ever talk about him ever. It's still burned in my brain. I just hear the announcer saying, Farokmanesh for 3 again. And, I mean, he was on fire in that game. And, again, Northern Iowa, like, nobody would have expected that, especially the way Kansas was playing that year. And I lived in Iowa for a year, and I had a couple of friends from high school that ended up going to Northern Iowa. And so I have a kind of little bit of connection there. And a couple years later afterwards, of course. But, again, watching that, it was just another upset moment. I'm just a huge underdog fan. And so whenever something like that happens, I'm just like, awesome. This is a cool day.
Yeah, I was sitting on my uncle's couch in Aurora. I was there for a baseball tournament, but we got rained out for the day. So we were just kind of hanging out, flipping through all of the March Madness games. And we stumbled across the Northern Iowa-Kansas game. And, I mean, Northern Iowa is just putting it on Kansas. It's a close game, but they just keep hitting 3 after 3 after 3. Like, I mean, I've never seen a team shoot that well. I think the closest thing I can think of was Texas A&M's comeback victory. They were down like 15 points with like 2 minutes left, and they came back in. Well, I think it was against Northern Iowa too, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's who it was against. So I'm gonna have to look that one up. Yeah, but that Kansas one broke my heart because Kansas was supposed to win that year. They were so good. It was heartbreaking to watch that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Sorry I'd have to do that to you.
That's all right. For my 4th favorite sports moment of all time, I'm going to have to go with the ALCS 2003 Game 7 when Aaron Boone hit a walk-off home run on the first pitch of the 12th inning. As a Yankees fan, I can't stand Boston. I can't stand Boston sports in general. I can kind of tolerate the Celtics a little bit, but like I can't stand the Red Sox. I can't stand the Patriots. I don't really like the Bruins for hockey either.
Yeah.
So to watch my favorite team beat my least favorite team in a baseball game for a trip to the World Series, it's just like icing on top of a cake that's already laid out for me. Honestly, the Yankees probably should have closed the series out 2 games before that, but they kind of choked in both games 5 and 6. So it just, they were down 4-1 in Game 7. Pedro Martinez was throwing one of the best playoff games ever at the time. And then the Yankees, they left him in an inning too long. The Yankees came back and tied it up, and then, they did their thing. And Aaron Boone led them to the World Series, which, I mean, they ended up losing to the Florida Marlins that year anyways. But still, just for them to get there that year, it was crazy. And then the next year getting A-Rod in that huge blockbuster trade was a big deal. So, Aaron Boone's walk-off just kind of – it's just one of the best sports moments ever, I think. And I think it's one of the only times I ever liked Joe Buck's announcing of what was happening. When the ball was hit, he just goes, "This might send the Yankees to the World Series." And then he goes, "It does. Yankees win." And then, that's the only time I ever liked Joe Buck. I can't stand that guy, but yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know. I'm kind of impartial when it comes to Joe Buck, but I think that's hilarious. At least you have a positive memory with him, to say the
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
So my moving up to number 3 spot. This one is one that has kind of multiple layers to it. This is the 2014 NBA Finals, and the Spurs got revenge on LeBron James and the NBA Heat, or the Miami Heat, excuse me. Because the year before, of course, it was the Spurs and Heat in the finals as well. And the Heat were working on a repeat. They had beaten the Thunder the previous year. And I never really liked or really cared about LeBron while he was at Cleveland, but when he moved to Miami the way that he did, I developed this hatred towards him like a lot of people did. And so seeing him win a title at a place that he abandoned his former team for just never sat right with me. And then that game 6 happened against the Spurs. I mean, Danny Green was having one of the greatest three-point shooting NBA finals ever. I mean, I think he still has the record for most three-pointers in the finals, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Steph Curry might, but anyway, he had an amazing series. And so I thought, like, this is manifest destiny. This is going to happen. The Spurs are going to win this. And then the Spurs took out Tim Duncan, and then Ray Allen hits that corner 3.
I think it's honestly top 5 greatest shots I've ever seen. And
oh, yeah.
It made me so mad because all you had to do was just rebound the ball and the game's over and you win another championship and you get out-rebounded. And you take your best player off the court and the team gets an offensive rebound. Then you leave arguably probably right as of right now, I still think he's got the numbers. He definitely has the record for most three-pointers in a career. I don't think he's the greatest shooter ever. I think that goes to Steph Curry. But
yeah,
Ray Allen's definitely close second too. Leaving him, I mean, he wasn't open, but you gave him enough space for him to get off that shot. I don't know.
I mean, Tony Parker did get his hand right on his face. He still made it. So I totally agree that it's one of the best shots ever in an NBA game, period. But the next year when the Spurs came back and had the most impressive passing game I've ever seen on television throughout an entire series to really dismantle and end the Miami Heat dynasty was so satisfying in so many ways. My team winning the NBA Finals, seeing a team that I just despised. I liked Dwayne Wade, but everything else in that roster I just wasn't a fan of.
Yeah.
And to see that kind of end was just very satisfying. It might sound evil for me to say that, but personally, I don't care. It was fun.
Yeah, now LeBron James going to the Miami Heat. I used to wasn't a big LeBron fan, but I had posters on my wall. You would respect him. Yeah, I respected him. He was good. He moves to Miami, and I couldn't stand him. And, watching him lose to the Mavericks was just beautiful.
Oh, yes.
I don't like the Mavericks at all, but anytime I saw LeBron lose that year was just my hatred for him just built and built every time he'd lose. And then I was, I'm a Kevin Durant fan, and so I was really hoping that the Thunder would beat him. But they just were too young. They didn't really have the necessary bench to beat them. I mean, James Harden coming off the bench helped a little bit, but they just didn't have enough to beat him.
The fact that Thunder team never won an NBA Finals is beyond
It's sad.
me.
It's sad, honestly. If they would have paid James Harden the money he deserved, they probably would have won 2 or 3 championships for sure.
Yeah, so, Kevin Durant would probably still be with the Thunder.
Yeah, honestly. No, I think that's one of the big reasons why he said he left. He just couldn't stand the management. Made a lot of choices that just made it easier for him to walk away from. So, But yeah, watching LeBron James lose a NBA Finals was great. And then, I mean, the next year, leaving Miami just like that to go back to Cleveland just shows that he didn't really have, he doesn't have that killer instinct like Jordan and them had to stay with one team and to build upon, all those times that Jordan lost to the Detroit Pistons and stuff. It just fueled the hate that he had losing, and it just made him and his team get better every year.
It's a motivator.
Yeah, you didn't really see that with LeBron so much, and especially when he left, I thought it was a very, very unwelcoming thing to do. I was, honestly, I don't hate LeBron as much as I used to, just because, like, you got to appreciate his greatness. He's probably top players of all time, and it's just hard to sit there and say that he doesn't deserve to be talked about in that way, because he's doing things at his size that no one has really ever seen besides Magic Johnson. But he's a better scorer and a better shooter than Magic Johnson ever was. So I could see the argument for number 2, but he's always just going to be number 2 for me. I just don't think there's a better player than Michael Jordan. There's not a better assassin than Michael Jordan on the court. Like Kobe Bryant's probably a close second, but if I want to win a championship and I want the last shot to go to someone, it's Michael Jordan. I'm going to take Michael Jordan every single day. It doesn't matter what it is.
I totally agree. I think you're going to get a lot of hate comments on this video, though, with all
Probably.
the LeBron James fans out there.
Probably.
But, I mean, when it comes to opinion, I mean, when you have one, we got to speak out like this, you know? Makes sense.
My number 3 moment is one that I probably will always love just because I got to watch my least favorite athlete ever lose in a Super Bowl. I can't stand Tom Brady. I've never liked him. I've never liked Tom Brady. And to watch David Tyree go up for a pass when Eli Manning should have definitely been sacked. Watch him go up, catch the ball, put it on his helmet, and go down to the ground with it so that he could sit there and hold on to that football. It's one of the best catches I've ever seen in any football game, honestly. Yeah. And, you know, it kept the drive alive for New York to go down and throw a game-winning touchdown. And that was the year, I think, that New England was undefeated. They hadn't lost a single game all year long.
Right, considered the greatest team ever at that point.
They had Randy Moss. They had – who else did they have on that team?
Oh, gosh, I can't even
Tom
remember.
Brady, Randy Moss, all those defensive guys.
That linebacker.
Teddy Bruschi.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I mean, they had one of the best teams I'd ever seen. On paper, I mean, they look like one of the best teams ever, and rightly so. But just watching Tom Brady lose, I always love it.
It warms your heart. Your heart, to say the least. I remember, you know, there's a saying, or I guess there's the definition of being dead is no longer having brain activity and no heartbeat. When that helmet catch happened, I'm pretty sure I was legally dead. My brain broke, my heart stopped. And I remember we had the high school football team over from McClave to watch the Super Bowl. My dad did that a couple of years because, he was the coach or one of the coaches of the team. Mm-hmm. And I remember just having this house packed full of high school football players. I was, I think, 12 or 11 or something?
We would have probably been in like 6th or 7th grade when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was one of the first Super Bowls that I remember really, really caring about because, like you, I've always had this distaste for Tom Brady. I respect him more now. It's kind of like LeBron James situation. Like, I respect the things he's done, but I still am not a fan just because, he's Patriots, Broncos fans. It just makes sense. And I remember going into that game just like, please, like literally praying, like let Eli Manning win because Peyton had won the year before. Mm-hmm. And it'd be a cool thing to see brothers win back-to-back. And then to see Eli Manning just become Houdini all of a sudden and escape out of that sack and throw that pass. I mean, that honestly probably should have been picked.
Oh,
but
yeah, definitely.
For Tyree to go up and just plant it on his helmet, and then it felt like the review of that took an eternity.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
They were looking at like, did he really do this? Did he really get that? And they looked closer and closer and closer. It's like, there's space. It's a catch. And I was just like, yes! And literally, I was a little immature about this. And then again, I was in 6th grade. I went up to every single high school player that was there that was cheering for the Patriots, and I was just like, what do you say to that? And luckily for me, the Giants ended up winning, or else I had gotten the crap kicked out of me.
Yeah.
But no, it was a very exciting moment for sure.
No, we had some Patriots fans at our on my baseball team in college, and we were watching the Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl. And we all thought it was over at halftime. I mean, it was 28-3. Like, no one thought the Patriots were going to come back. And, that's where I gained all the respect in the world for Tom Brady. I may not like him, but I sure respect him and think he's probably the greatest quarterback of all time. Just watching him come back in that Super Bowl down 25 points, I mean, credit the Patriots, but also you got to fault the Falcons play calling for getting soft and not, trying to move the ball and scoring points. They were playing not to lose instead of playing to win. So
right. And when you do that, you always lose.
Yeah, it was those moments right there, just kind of solidify the moment for David Tyree. Just that's the only reason why we know him. We don't really know him other than that. Yeah. Like it's what we know him for. He didn't have the greatest NFL career, didn't really do a whole lot after that or before that, but that moment in time, he became one of the most popular wide receivers ever. So
yeah, and that Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl, that's another championship game that I missed because of a freaking church mission. And I'm just like, really? Clemson, Denver, and then the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history, and I miss it.
Yep.
It's just compiling. And then the Cavaliers coming back to beat the Warriors. Like, never mind. Yeah. Before I go too far, my number 2 spot for top 10 sports moments. And just to preface this, I'm not a BYU fan, not by much stretch of the imagination at all. In fact, BYU is a rival of Boise State, so I kind of have a hatred towards BYU football. But the years that Jimmer Fredette was there were some of the most amazing years to watch. Because, like, I remember, like, I had a church leader who was really a big BYU fan. And so, like, I'd go over to his house and watch just because, he was a good friend. And seeing Jimmer Fredette play was just amazing. And the one specific moment I'm talking about was his basically half-court shot, spot-up shot against Florida in the Sweet 16. And I believe it was 2011, I think, or 2010.
I think it's 2010, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember sitting there watching that shot, him just stop, pull up, and drain it like it was nothing, and looking back and just stone-cold expression. At that moment, I was like, okay, this guy is awesome. This guy is legit, and he's the reason why I ended up becoming a three-point specialist in high school. And that was my job my senior year, just stay in the corner and shoot threes. And the reason why I wore number 32 in basketball in high school was because of that guy, because he wasn't fast. He wasn't very strong. He wasn't very quick. He didn't have all the great skills that all these great college basketball players have, but he made up for that with sheer effort and shooting ability, which we're seeing a lot more of that now in basketball, with people just being able to shoot out the wazoo from God knows where on the court. But Jimmer Fredette was the guy that really started all of that for me personally in my love of basketball with that moment right there.
Yeah, no, Jimmer Fredette was a phenomenon when we were in school. Like, I remember in middle school basketball, we just, tried to mimic all of his different shots.
Jimmer range.
Yeah, trying to shoot from deep. Not that we were ever strong enough to really shoot that way in middle school, but, watching Jimmer Fredette play kind of, I think, like you said, opened the gate for other players to really expand their range. Like, so, I mean, Steph Curry's kind of perfected the whole deep shot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's his thing now for sure.
But Jimmer was one of the pioneers where if you could shoot that far and you can make it on a consistent basis, then why not? I mean, if you're going to shoot it at a high percentage, I'm not going to sit there and tell you not to if it's going to go in more often than it doesn't. And so, right. And obviously we talked about this the last time that we did this, is that 3 points is always worth more than 2. And I think Jimmer Fredette kind of didn't really transition it like Steph Curry did. Steph Curry kind of made the 3-point shot, didn't make it necessarily the way the game was played, but he just perfected it better than anybody.
Yes.
And I think Jimmer Fredette, honestly, right now would probably fit in basketball now more than he did when he came out of college. And honestly, that kind of stinks because he went to China and he just tore it up in China.
Oh yeah.
He came to America. He even tore it up here against the American teams here, but just his lack of defense and other
that is the only Chinese league jersey that I ever want to purchase, is that Jimmer Fredette one for the Sharks.
Yeah, no, Jimmer Fredette was a phenomenon it was crazy. Like, you couldn't believe it, but at the same time, like, you could, just because it was happening right there in front of your face.
Right.
So yeah, Jimmer Fredette was crazy. I missed watching him play at that level, miss watching those crazy shots.
Absolutely. And I told you this last time we tried to do this was that same year before that NCAA tournament, I went and saw him play against Air Force in Colorado Springs. And I remember we were sitting about 6 rows behind the BYU bench, and they went out for a timeout. They bring out all the chairs, and they were facing our side of the stands. And he looks up towards our general direction, and we just kind of like point at him like idiot middle schoolers like we were. And, he just kind of like nods and winks, and we're just like, oh, yes, yes. And then we end up leaving, and we turn around and look near where we were. It turns out his family was sitting like right in front of us, and that's what he was looking at. So we weren't special, but it was still really cool because he scored like 12 points in the first like 3 minutes, or even sooner than that. And right away we're just like, okay, this guy is pretty dang awesome.
Yeah, so Jimmer Fredette was good, and one of the better college basketball players that I can remember for sure.
Yeah.
So for my number 2, I didn't get to watch this live. I was old enough to get to watch it live, but I'm not old enough to remember it. But yeah. Michael Jordan's game-winning shot in the 1998 finals to beat the Jazz, to solidify his second three-peat, not his first, but his second one. It's his final shot as a Bull. It's one of the most watched shots of all time. I can still watch this highlight over and over again, just looking at how beautiful it came out of his hands, watching him steal the ball from Karl Malone. And you knew at the moment that he stole the ball from Karl Malone that he was going to take the final shot for the Bulls. You just knew it was going to happen.
Absolutely.
To watch him do that the way he did with such grace, one of the most pure jump shots I've ever seen come out of his hands. The best player to ever do it. Like, it's hard for me not to include Michael Jordan on this list just because he had so many moments that, you could have put on here. He's got his signature, dunk in the dunk contest where he's reaching out and it's like his signature logo. He's got the one where he cradles it in the dunk contest. He's got the game-winning shot at the free throw line to beat the Cavaliers. Like, he's just got all these moments that you could pick.
He's got the moment where he kind of should have dunked it, but really just brought it down just to show that he could in midair. Oh,
there's just so many things, so many highlights from him. It's like, honestly, like, it's a phenomenon. Like, it's almost like a story like you just can't believe, and you had to have been there to witness it. Otherwise, it's just kind of a story because all these stories are being told just make it seem like he was like almost like God himself, almost kind of.
Like a Greek god. He was Zeus on the basketball court.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy the way that people talk about him. And I think he's the greatest player ever, and I never really got to watch him play live. And I've just seen highlights, and I'm just like, he does what he does better than anybody else has ever done in the history of basketball.
Exactly.
And LeBron James is close second. I've seen LeBron James play, and I look at the highlights, and I just think that Jordan was just better at what he did.
Yeah.
He might not have all the statistics because he didn't play as long as LeBron did, but he just did he did what he did better than anybody else.
That's what I keep telling people. LeBron James has played longer. He got to the NBA sooner. That totally proves a lot of things I'm trying to tell people with statistics is that they lie. And you're totally right when you talk about his last shot as a Bull perfectly encapsulates everything he did with that franchise. I mean, every single iconic moment from his baseline juke out against the NBA Knicks or the New York Knicks. I keep saying NBA for the team's city. But, all these different moments that he had. And, I mean, the flu game, all these things that he did to solidify himself. And for those reasons, like you mentioned, he's going to stay the best NBA player to ever do that because he's the one who brought up the conversation in the first place. Everyone else coming up after him is simply trying to live up to that hype. When you have something that you have to live up to, you're almost never going to live up to it, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, because it's always that standard of being like like Jordan. And I totally agree with that placement on your list. I wish I would have been able to insert that here. I just have too many biases to insert third parties into. Speaking of biases, my number one pick for most influential sports moment of all time for me, I mentioned before to you that it's a tie between two separate moments. One's the 2007 Fiesta Bowl with Boise State and Oklahoma that, like we mentioned, like easily one of, if not the best college football game ever played. The most entertaining, the one with the most iconic moments, sound bites, highlights, you name it, it was in this game. And tied with that, it's a game that has much less significance in the national perspective, but for me, it was very impactful. As a fan of Boise State, it was Boise State's opening game win against Virginia Tech in 2011. And just kind of context to why this was important to me, Boise State came into the game, I believe they were ranked number 3, and Virginia Tech came in ranked like number 7 or something. So it was a top 10 matchup to begin the season. And Boise State, it's Boise State. They were in the WAC at the time. A team in the WAC being in the top 5, let alone the top 3, was unheard of. And them coming in there, they really had to prove themselves. They almost still felt like the underdog, even though they were up 4 spots higher than Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. And I remember exactly where I was at. I was at Sterling Nowacker's house in McClave by myself. And why I was by myself in somebody else's house, I will never know. I think my dad, maybe my brother, and like Sterling and all those guys were out doing something. And I really wanted to be at the house to watch the game because we didn't have channels at our house. I guess that's the reason. I guess I do know. But that first half when Boise State really took over that game and really on the national stage was showing, hey, we're legit. Our defense can stand up to anybody, and our quarterback, Kellen Moore, is the real deal. Kellen Moore is still my favorite college football player ever to have graced the football field, ever. I mean, he's doing a great job as offensive coordinator for the Cowboys now. I'm sad he was never a Broncos quarterback, but I have to live with that. But that moment watching that game right there and then seeing them kind of come back at the end to win was absolutely amazing. I mean, Virginia Tech did them no favors the next week, losing to some crappy team. I can't remember who they lost to. But that moment right there as a Boise State fan, and for Boise State fans everywhere, was the moment where, like, this is it. This is what it's like to be a top-tier team. This is what it's like to be a respected team. And it was probably one of, if not the coolest moment as a Boise State fan.
We talked about it earlier, the 2007 game, kind of putting it on the map. But like you said, like that 2011 game, honestly, I thought Boise State was going to have a chance to play for the college football championship. And I remember all of us were kind of annoyed in middle school with you talking about how good they were. But I mean, they were that good, and they deserved the chance to prove that they were that good. And honestly, it was kind of sad to see them not live up to the expectations set that season, because you wanted the underdog to be there.
You have no idea how terrified I was to go to school the day after Boise State lost to Nevada. You have no idea, Junior. It was the worst. Because I knew some of our friends would have been like, so how'd the game go last night? Just like, don't talk to me. Like, do not even.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
So it was just one of those. Boise State was the team for all of us, just to see small schools had the opportunity to prove that they belonged with the bigger schools. And honestly, I didn't dislike Boise State, but like I just remember their field, like it's iconic. It's blue turf, like it's just Boise State was really cool, really fun to watch. And I could see exactly why you would have them as as a favorite team, being a small school that's pretty good, that competes with the bigger schools. And I just wish that we'd see more of that now as we transition into this college football playoff, to just expand it, just to let these smaller schools get that opportunity to compete for a national championship, because they don't really get that a whole lot. And, I think they deserve it just as much as these Power 5 schools do.
Yeah,
So,
and as much as I respect Clemson, like you're seeing the same teams in the college football playoff every single year: Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. That fourth spot is always kind of like hit or miss with different teams,
it's
like
Oklahoma,
Oregon,
Georgia, Oregon.
Yeah, all those different teams. That's kind of interchangeable.
LSU.
Yeah, all those teams. I keep forgetting LSU, even though they just won it. But it's very much a what's it called? A very limited list of teams that end up making it, because again, their conference, and they are that good, no doubt about it. But no, I totally agree that if we have that expansion, you can have more excitement. It'd be like March Madness for football. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah. So my final moment, rest in peace, Kobe, because everything that's happened this year, 2020 has just kind of sucked, and there's no way to go about it. You've got Juice. I mean, I know a lot of people probably aren't fans of Juice WRLD, but I like Juice WRLD's music, and to see him go early in January was kind of sad to see. And then Kobe a couple weeks later with him and his daughter and all those people involved in that helicopter crash. And now the coronavirus just kind of it took away sports. Like, we have no sports to talk about right now. Like, it's crazy. We aren't doing anything. And I would have never imagined this. But
it's all free agency stuff. And if you know me, that's my least favorite part about sports, is that's all we have.
Yeah. And so, but I have to put Kobe Bryant's 60-point game and his final game ever on here, just because it was something you just had to tune into. You couldn't, that day that it happened, you couldn't just not watch it. I mean, I turned on my TV. I don't really like watching professional basketball on TV, just because, like, there's not a whole lot of defense being played. It's high scoring. Right. It's just not like it used to be. I like watching I'll watch the playoffs for sure, but I don't get into the regular season games. But I tuned in for the entire game, and at that point, the Jazz was looking to secure the 8th spot in the West, and they needed to win a game. They needed some help from other teams to win too, a couple teams to lose. But I mean, they were playing for a playoff chance that night, and Kobe Bryant took 50 shots in his final game. 50, like that is I don't know any other player that would be allowed to shoot 50 times in one game. Like I
barely is.
Michael Jordan,
like maybe LeBron.
Yeah, LeBron, Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant shot 50 times. He made 22 shots and finished the game with 60 points. And that he led a comeback against the Jazz to help the Lakers win. Like, in his final game, for what he did at his age was just unheard of. And it's a bigger moment now that he's gone and he's no longer with us. It's just a bigger moment because it's something we can look back on. It just happened. It's something we can look back on as one of the best sports moments ever. One of the best stories that entire season, him having to deal with all those injuries and playing every single night, and his farewell tour that they had for him. It was just, his whole season was crazy. And that last moment, the last game of his career, scoring 60 was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Left me speechless.
I saw a video the other day of a couple weeks before Kobe's last game, and Shaq was interviewing him, and he said, like, hey, come on, give me 50 in your last game. And Kobe's like, no way, man. And he was right. No way. He was going to get 60. Yeah. 50 wasn't good enough. Yeah. 60 was the one to get. And no, I totally agree. I mean, I grew up, again, being a Spurs fan. I didn't like the Lakers just because they're always the team to beat in the West in order for the Spurs to make it to the finals. But watching back on highlights of Kobe Bryant, especially that last game, there's just that respect that you develop just because, like, how impressive he was day in, day out. The mentality that he had is the mentality that every single, player in sports, in any sport you're in, needs to have. It's that mentality of, like, I'm not going to be beat today. Nobody's going to be better than me. Nobody's going to work harder than me. And his work ethic is probably one of, if not the best of any athlete I've seen in my lifetime. And, it was actually interesting. I was also living in LA during that time, and I remember seeing all the different billboards, the different signs, like all the things that were happening during his final season and things that people were saying and, like, the hype around it. And, again, not necessarily being a Lakers fan my whole life, I realized, like, this guy means a lot to this city. This guy is the city of Los Angeles. I mean, no matter how good the Clippers ever get, the Lakers and Kobe Bryant will always be the face of Los Angeles. As good or bad as that might end up being, that's just the case. And Kobe just solidified his place in, NBA history, not only with his, finals championships, which there were plenty of, but with his hard work, his tenacity, and just the impact he left on the city as a whole.
Yeah, you mentioned his work ethic. The story of Jay Williams coming into the arena, they're playing the Lakers that night. Kobe Bryant's already there shooting around, working out and everything. So Jay Williams comes in there and he works out, does his whole workout, and then finishes. It's about an hour workout. He finishes. He goes to the sauna. Well, as he's coming off the court, he realizes Kobe is still working out, still going 100%, still doing game moves. Well, that night, Kobe goes out and scores over 40 points against them. And Jay Williams goes up to him after the game to talk to him, and he asked Kobe, he's like, dude, how did you play so well after working so hard in warm-ups? He was like, well, I saw you coming in working hard, so I just knew I had to work harder, so I had to outwork you because there's no way that you're going to beat me. You couldn't beat me working out. You're not going to beat me in the game, and that's just how it's going to go. And it makes you appreciate everything that Kobe did for basketball because he was one of the hardest working people that any sport has ever really seen. He put in the work, shed blood, sweat, and tears his whole career. He just wanted things done the right way and wanted to show everybody why he was in the conversation for one of the greatest players of all time. Yeah. And to watch him do it from high school, from 18 years old all the way to his final game, like, I don't know, 20 years, you just can't beat that kind of career. Finishing, I think, third all-time in points. You can only envision, you can only dream something like that, but Kobe made it a reality, and it sucks to see him go because he was, honestly, it was interesting to watch him being a coach, coaching his daughter play, just because, like, he had the same mentality he did as a player, as a coach, and he was able to, invest that into his daughter and into his other daughters, and as well as invest that into coaching. And it was different. It's weird seeing him laugh and seeing all those, like, interviews and stuff with him after he retired from basketball, just because it's like he's almost a different person. It's like almost two different people. There's the Kobe that played, and then there's the Kobe that coached. So they're like almost two different people with similar worth ethics. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. And one of the coolest things from the ceremony at the Lakers, or I guess Staples Arena, when Shaq went up and talked about Kobe. And, you talk about his work ethic and his competitiveness. His competitiveness even stranded to his teammates. He wanted to prove he was the best person on the court, regardless of who was wearing his jersey. And he talked about how, Kobe was at a point in his career when he was like, again, trying to prove that he was the best, and so he wasn't passing the ball that much, which is what he was kind of known for. He was kind of a ball hog.
Yeah.
But Shaq and the teammates were like talking of like, yeah, he's not really passing the ball to us very much. And Shaq's like, oh, I'll go talk to him, which we all know is just the most brilliant move with Shaq and Kobe. But Shaq goes up and is like, hey, there's no I in team. He's like, yeah, but there's an M-E in that mother effer. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, that totally fits Kobe Bryant much.
Oh, yeah. No, Kobe, it's sad that he's gone, and we don't get to enjoy him as a person as we did as a player. But what he left for his legacy for everybody, his family included, he was just a family man. You can't really top it. I mean, he has the one blemish on his record with the sexual assault case. But, I mean, other than that, there's nothing really bad that you could say about the guy. He just did things the right way, played the game as hard as he could every time. He's got some of the best sports moments ever, 60 points in his final game, scored 81 in a game. Like, the guy was just unbelievable. And to see him go is just really sad. So I have him at number one, not because he passed away, but because that moment was just so special for everybody who was a basketball fan, and especially a Lakers fan and a Kobe fan. So
yeah, totally agree with that.
So, but that's going to conclude our top 10 favorite sports moments for the both of us. If you guys want to check out some more content like this, our podcast is going to be bringing on special guests every week, and we're going to be talking about different sports things. Going to be doing some ranking stuff, going to be doing like, would you start, bench, or cut them, kind of things like that. We're going to be doing that on our podcast. On the Cheap Shot. So if you're interested in that kind of content, come and subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in any kind of gaming content, any sports related, Call of Duty related, stuff like that, come check out the channel. I'll leave a link in the description to Dawson's channel as well. Dawson, do you want to tell them exactly what you've been working on lately and explain what's going on with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having me on here. This is a blast talking about this. My channel deals with a lot of different contents. I talk a lot about movies, video games. I do song covers as well. Art tutorials. I post a weekly sketch every Friday, a digital drawing. I just recently did one this past Friday, of course. And so you can check that out. Got a lot of cool things in the works. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I got a fun collaboration music video planned where I'm going to compile videos of different people together so that we can all celebrate and connect through music, even though we can't all connect in a physical way. And so, again, a lot of stuff to check out. So if you're into all things nerdy, including music and art, you can check out Nerdy in many ways.
You should definitely go subscribe to him just for the Friday sketch alone. This past Friday, he sketched Two-Face, and you get to see him go through a time shot of everything that he did with it, all the detail that he put into it. I'm telling you, he's one of the better artists that I've ever seen in person. And I remember as a kid, we used to sit there and ask him to draw things for us. And in class, he would sit there and draw quarterbacks and all kinds of stuff. And so I've just seen him grow as an artist over all these years, and not only his art, digital art and stuff, but then as the music artist. He's got a band with his own family. It's worth checking out. I think you should definitely go check him out. I'll leave his link to his channel in the description. Definitely want you guys to go look at that and share this content so that way he can get his channel growing. He just reached 350 subscribers. You had a channel that had quite a bit of subscribers before, didn't it? But didn't it get hacked?
Yeah, so I started YouTube a little over a year ago because my little brother did, and I was just like, oh, heck, why not? And it was a very similar kind of channel that I was doing. And 8 months in, I was getting to about 390 subscribers. And then my email account got hacked, and so I had to start over. But we just recently, as of today, got back to 378 subscribers.
Nice.
And so we're getting about 4 months. We're covering more ground than I did in the first 8 months that I had YouTube. And so it's a very exciting time. It's definitely building. And, I appreciate all you're saying about the channel and all the art, man. That warms my heart a little bit.
Yeah, dude, I definitely pay attention to that kind of stuff. Not only your channel, but my cousin's channel, Davin, just reached 500 subscribers the other day.
Dang.
These things are growing. A lot of people don't really have a whole lot to do, so why not make YouTube videos for people? It's an easy way to express yourself. And honestly, I've been doing it for a little less than it hasn't been 2 full months yet, and I've already got my subscriber count up to 50. I think I'm at 51 right now, so I'm trying to reach 100 before the end of the month. I'm gonna do some kind of special giveaway. Don't know if it's gonna be like a gift card yet, but it's definitely going to be something like that. It might even be some kind of merchandise stuff. I don't know, not my personal merchandise, but maybe something else like that.
Yeah,
So
definitely subscribe to him, guys. You guys don't know what you're missing out if you're not. Every time I see them do gaming stuff, it's always a blast. They always have a fun time with it. I don't personally have the materials to do that myself, so I kind of like live vicariously through this channel to see what they can do. So it's very impressive. Yeah, definitely check it out.
yeah, and I'm going to be posting. I have another video that's going to be coming out here shortly. I don't know if I'm going to post it at the same time as this video or if I've already posted it, but it's going to be another Road to the Show MLB series. I got called up to AAA, so
nice.
It's going to be pretty interesting to see where we go from there, how long it takes us to get to the major leagues. So I'll be posting that. So go ahead and be on the lookout for that if I haven't already posted this by the time this comes up. But I think that's going to do it for us. So Dawson, thank you for coming on. I
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your input, and we'll see you guys later.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.